All right, are we live and going on our webinar? Good to go, Arturo?
Good to go.
All right, cool. I'll turn it over to Stacy and she can do the introductions and start talking for the next hour and a half. Go ahead, Stacy. She hates when I do that. She's like wanting to crawl underneath the desk. It's so funny. I get a real kick out of her turning red and being so mad at me for that.
I
But
can do it.
okay,
No,
let's
I'm
do
just
it.
kidding.
Yeah. Well, as normal, guys, I appreciate everyone attending. We're going to talk a little bit for a couple minutes just to get some introductions going. Talk about, I'll give you a story that'll put you right to sleep. So we'll go through that and give it a few more minutes for people to jump in. So in attendance, we have Stacy, we have Melanie, we have Miranda, we have Arturo, and I'm not going to go through each of their roles, but I appreciate them being on here. They may jump in with some of these things. Our title to this presentation is going to be the top 10 most frequently asked questions that we get from owners. And I literally have like 5 or 6 pages of notes to go through. But I'm going to bore the audience with a good story. Okay, everyone have their popcorn out. This is kind of a cool story for me being a veteran, right? We have Veterans Day coming up next week on the 11th. And I have a high school junior. His name is Drake. He goes to Bernie Champion High School. And Drake is pretty much 90%, 95% committed to wanting to go to Texas A&M and be in the Corps Cadets. So that's pretty neat. We went to actually do a visit, about a month ago, I think it was. We did a night with the Corps. So we stayed there at A&M and College Station, and Drake went off the Corps Cadets and did the whole tour of the campus and all they do. And so a couple nights ago, he shocked me, and he found the detail that he wants to do with the Corps Cadets at A&M. And Melanie, you'll get it, because you kind of know Drake a little bit. But he shows me a picture of there's a detail inside of the Corps Cadets where they take care of the mascot, and the mascot is a collie dog. That's what he wants to do if he attends the Corps. He's not worried about military. He's not worried about his engineering stuff because he's a total engineer. He's not a BS salesperson like his dad. He is like an analytical build it. And so he wants to take care of the dog. That's his whole Corps Cadet wanting to be thing right now, unless he changes and discovers girls or I don't know what. But let's just hope he's on the narrow path for that. And then he's also getting into 3D printing left and right, super duper. In fact, our CPA firm, Shannon Badger, Shannon invited Drake to come over. This was 2 weeks ago to coach Shannon's 12 and 11-year-old boys. Like they got a 3D printer, but had no idea how to set it up. And so they asked Drake if he would come over. He went over there on Saturday morning and spent 3-4 hours with the boys and set up their printer. And they started printing stuff. And these 8th grade, 7th grade boys were just enamored by all the stuff that Drake knew about 3D printing. So he is a engineer at heart. All right, I bore everybody with that story just because, it's good to give everybody a couple minutes to sign in. You don't want to start right at 3 o'clock because not everyone's as punctual as me. But the other side of that is now we can kick it off and get into the top 10 most frequently asked questions that owners have. And so if you can see me, I have lots of notes. This is a front back, like 4 pages of notes I compiled here this morning and yesterday. Okay, question 1. Why should a home be priced aggressively on the market? This has to do with how we recommend our owners in pricing their homes. There are 2 things that are going to get homes to rent. It's going to be price and condition because we only rent vacant homes. The vacant homes, they're made ready. You can move into them tomorrow. As long as they allow pets, you have a really good chance of renting. The more aggressively you are priced on the market, the more exposure you get from the market, the less vacancy time. Overall increased annual income, of course, when you start comparing this to 2 to 3 months. So you kind of have to do some math in your head and kind of guesstimate if you went vacant for 2 months or 3 months because you were overpriced, and then all of a sudden you get the price that you want, you're actually making less on an annual basis because most of the tenants are going to stay 2 to 3 years. They're not going to stay 20 years. And so you're not going to catch up in the aggregate by trying to get an extra 100 or 200 a month. So, and you can do the math in your head if you really want to look at it. Let's say you want to do you end up with 3 months of vacancy because you overpriced it by $200. Okay, in addition to trying to make that extra $200 at 3 months, that's $600 extra, but you're spending $1,500 or $2,000 at a mortgage. It doesn't equate. Okay, it will never catch up. So also, The sooner you can rent it because of aggressive pricing, the less opportunity you have for crime or unforeseen home incidents. Crime's a big one potentially because if a vacant home is vacant, people start to figure it out. They'll door knock you. They'll see a newspaper. They'll see flyers. People walk around and they put flyers in your doors and neighborhoods. There's all these reasons that kind of can glare a vacant home, right? You've all seen it. And the more opportunity there's a vacant home, the worse you are. And the biggest fear we have is obviously an unforeseen catastrophic event, such as a pipe burst or a squatter kicks in the back door. I mean, it can go on and on about the bad stuff that can happen in a vacant home. So this is why we really hone in on try to get you to aggressively price the home to rent quickly. And this is also why we tie that into a 30-day guarantee, because we give you an actual scale of how that works. Okay, first 10 days you go from here, second 10 days you go from here, third 10 days you go from here. Believe us when we say we want to rent the home as quickly as possible as well, because we want to. That's our job. This is what we do. We have a leasing process that is second to none. We rent out probably 300 to 350 homes a year. We have this down to an absolute science. And we also take the best applicant as a kind of reminder. So the longer you're on the market, the higher price you are, the worse the applicants can be, because you're going to get one applicant. And it's going to be like, party. Oh God, we got an applicant on a home that's $2,000 when it should be $1,500, right? And you're celebrating. Oh, we got an applicant. And then you start to dig into them and you really, really, really want them to be approved and you want them to work out. But at the end of the day, they're just kind of like, they're the kind of folks that are applying for anything or through anybody that they think they can get an approval on, and they're willing to overpay. Well, in the meanwhile, you've been vacant 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, and the tenants that you actually do get because of that long vacancy, they're not going to be the great tenants. You would much rather have the pick of the litter than the runt of the litter at the very end. Okay, that's a terrible analogy I just came up with the top of my head, but it sounded good when I started to formulate it. And so I actually had Arturo dig up our policy letter that we send out, and we did some math a long time ago of 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, of 60 days of, let's say, lost rent, and you're paying a mortgage. So if you think at it in almost like double, right? If you have to think at it in a double loss because you're losing potential rent and you're putting out a mortgage that you're not getting paid for to reimburse yourself, if you have a mortgage, of course, then you have insurance and you have property taxes. All that is going out the window in the effort of you trying to get $100 or $200 more a month. Okay, I get the neighborhood, that the neighbor down the street got 1,800 and you're thinking you can get 1,800 when your home should be at 1,500. Okay, I know that's terrible math. It could be 2,500, it could be 8,500, right? Whatever the math is. The point is, we can't rent your mortgage. That's my favorite jerk saying, okay? We can't rent your mortgage, we have to rent your home. And if the home says it's worth X, that's kind of what you got to go with. And just be willing to drop. Sometimes there's ways that you can drop 50 bucks, 100 bucks a month, 200 bucks a month, and all of a sudden it pops. We've seen it where we go $25 and get 4 applications in a weekend. No joke. Okay, we've been doing this a long time and see all that kind of stuff happen. So in addition, we also offer 30-day leasing fee guarantees. We ask you to potentially consider the lower the asking price. All this is what I'm reading off of every time you get an email from us every week. And every time you talk to one of our property managers about the results of what's going on with your home. The things that we bring up from the very beginning are things you could do from the very beginning. It's not like I had I had a seller ask me, is there anything more that we can be doing with the home to make it sell? Well, if there were, we would have done it from day one. Okay, if there were. And that's how we treat these homes. Okay, so I wanted to really hone in on that process. That was a long explanation for why should a home be priced aggressively on the market. So I hope some of that sunk in.
Brad, I
Miranda, go ahead.
have a specific like story about that. I recently was working with 2 different homeowners on the far northwest side, like Redbird Ranch area. That is a really tough market right now. Very, very tough. Just a lot of competition and
Overbuilt,
still so much
landlocked,
growth.
yep.
So, it's just really hard. But basically I had two homeowners, one of them wanted to price their home for what their mortgage was, which was like 2150 or something like that. And they were just like, I really want to try to get this price. It was a nice home. It was practically brand new, very good condition, but so was the other person I was dealing with. However, they were willing to price more aggressively to kind of beat out their competition. And so they started off at like 1895, versus the first person was wanting to price closer to like 2100. And so, despite us suggesting to price more aggressively, they're like, no, I really want to price at this point, try to get as much as my mortgage covered as possible. So, we always tell people like, we're here to give you advice, but ultimately you make the final decisions kind of thing. So house A priced at 2100, house B priced at 1895, and house B had a application and an active person ready to lease his home within 10 days versus house A stayed on the market for 90 days. So house B rented in 10 days ultimately, and so made about $5,600 over house A because of how quickly it rented. Ultimately, house A ended up having to bring their price down to 1900, and it did eventually get rented, but they wasted, 90 days sitting on the market trying to get their full mortgage covered. So, and those homes just get stale when they just sit there. So ultimately, when we are telling people to price more aggressively, it's not because we, want them to get less money. It's just because we're trying to get them ultimately more revenue for the year.
Yeah, and there's a fun note on new home purchases, for example. And it could have been a newer neighborhood. That whole side has been overbuilt and it's landlocked to a certain extent. So it is tougher on some of those homes. There's builders out there that are building great homes. However, people need to understand in this market that when you build a home, it actually goes down in value the first year or two. It goes down, probably tanks around at the bottom around year 2 or year 3, and then starts to climb up in value because why would you buy a 2-year-old home when you can buy a brand new home for the builder with all of their incentives? I mean, they really, really, really put out the red carpet of incentives in selling those homes in these newer neighborhoods. And it just kind of asks a question, why would you do that? It's not only the incentives of what they do in the build, but the mortgage rates they offer are typically lower and they cover your closing costs. I mean, you start putting dollar for dollar, it's very difficult unless you did something crazy with that home, like you put in a pool and gold toilets. Okay, let's move on. Why do we charge a management fee when the home is vacant? So we do charge the management fees while the home is vacant, and it does tie into the long, lengthy question that we just answered about why should a home be priced aggressively on the market? They do kind of go hand in hand. One, we still manage the home. So everything that happens to the home is still under our responsibility. Our team is still working on either a make-ready, a post-tenancy, or active marketing that home from the very first day that it becomes vacant. It helps encourage our owners now to also price aggressively in today's market. And it does it's a stark reminder that there are still costs associated, and we really have to just keep up with those costs to make sure that we are covered because of all the efforts we put forward. And I go into the, home sits longer in the market and it's more work for everyone, but we do want the periodic visits to happen. So that's going to be something that we also have to get done. We have to deal with unqualified applicants. So we have to take all the applications in, run the background checks, all that stuff. And we're actively supervising inspections and make-readies, which often incur non-reimbursement for second or third inspection. So if a home sits on the market for 90 days, we might end up visiting the home 2 or 3 times just to do a spot check or just to do a, mow the lawn or something along those lines. It really isn't, it depends situation on that. However, all those things are falling under us and they're under our management structure and management fees. So unfortunately, we do charge a management fee for vacant homes, and we do want to not have to do that because we want to rent your home quickly as possible. So I hope that answers that question. It's never a fun discussion to answer that, but it's part of our policy, and we feel that it's necessary. It just has to be done. So number 3 then, why do we charge a maintenance oversight fee for coordinating maintenance, conducting maintenance? Okay, maintenance is fun because we are acting as a general contractor as soon as we make any sort of call or email or text in organizing maintenance for your home. All the back and forth that goes between the the tenant, the property management company, and the vendor, all that back and forth with that trifecta takes around 7 to 9 touches. That's the average. So we use a very good service called Property Mail. They help with all of our maintenance coordination. They take all these data points down and regurgitate that to us. We do all the tenant and the vendor coordination, which is a big part. We carry all the necessary insurance. We verify and supervise every subcontractor that works with us for licenses and insurance. And we conduct inspections to ensure the work that is being charged was actually completed to our standard. So we have all the vendors under an agreement with us. And these vendors provide us with all of their insurance. They provide us with all of their licenses if they have any, and they abide by our terms. And we have to supervise those vendors. It's just impossible to keep staff on hand that could do all the work that we need to get done. Air conditioning is a licensed event. We can't keep a licensed AC person on staff. We'd have to charge triple, et cetera, et cetera. It goes from fixing a fence post to installing a new doorknob all the way up to like installing a new roof. Those things have to be done with third-party vendors or subcontractors, in other words. We carry all of that liability upon our heads just by acting as a general contractor. So we do have to charge maintenance. Now, understand that we do charge a 10% fee with a cap of $65. So if we do a $3,000 repair, it's per occurrence. Okay, so we don't try to lump it in. We don't try to do anything shady on this. Let's say you have a leak in the bathroom. Okay, and the bathroom, well, let me use a better example. I had a leak in our air conditioning here in the attic. So the drain pan got full and the thing dripped down into one of the bedrooms and got the carpet all wet. And then now I got to get the ceiling painted and stuff like that. Well, that's one occurrence. Okay, but let's break that down. I had an air conditioning guy. Now I need a carpet guy. Now I need a painter. If in really bad, you might need an electrician to verify things that are working. So all those 4 particular vendors in that scenario are one vendor. Okay, one action of what we have to coordinate to get done. So we only charge up to that $65 fee. That's our intent. Okay, so it's per incident because almost everything is 2 vendors. Again, that leaky bathtub concept, you fix a bathtub, you got to fix the drywall. Okay, so those things are going to play into it. And the big part I want you to understand is ultimately we are liable. We carry the insurance and we do all the vendor and tenant coordination. It's all on our shoulders. So yes, we have to charge for that. So that's just 2 bad points, I guess you'd have to say, why we do this and why we do that. But I'm hoping that clarified something in those particular 2 big points. All right, this is fun. What happens if the tenant does not pay rent on time? Oh, it's the hammer, the lightning bolts from heaven. Boom, right down on the tenant. Okay, well, we have our standard routine collection process. And the routine collection process happens towards the end of the month. We don't suddenly start trying to collect rent on the 3rd or the 4th. We have reminder emails that go out. We have reminder phone calls that go out. And pre any of that, we do everything where we try to get the tenant to pay automatically through our online system. And then they can even pay, set it up to where it's just done an automatic charge. So it's all through ACH. It can be a set and forget. So we try to get that up and running from the very beginning with all of the tenants that move into our homes. And so that's part 1. So if they don't pay rent on time, we have all these different online and auto payment features that are there. We do have to try to avoid this on a regular basis. So what happens is we do the text, emails, phone calls after the payment's not received. And then if it gets to the point of the 4th, 5th, or 6th of the month, after all those efforts of phone calls and text messages to collect the rent, we end up having to post notice to vacate. And I say it could be the 4th, 5th, or 6th. Well, it really depends on the weekends, etc. But the rent is late after the 3rd. Am I correct, Melanie, in saying that?
The 5th.
The 5th now. Okay, rent is late. We're so generous now. I mean, things have changed with the laws, since we've been doing this for so long, 12, 14 years now. The rent is due on the 5th. So that's Monday morning, the next day of the 6th, rent is past due. That's when we start our further collection efforts with a notice to vacate. Go ahead, Stace.
Late as of the 5th. So due by the 4th, late on the 5th.
Cool. Take it from here. I'm going to sit back and watch.
No.
She hates it when I do that. I know I harp on her all the time. So if we don't have rent in hand, we do file a notice of eviction and we post notice to the front door. Okay. That's a service that we have to do. We also send out certified mail. Okay, so the tenant's going to get certified mail and going to get notice posted. That is setting us up to go into a courtroom. Okay, we do
And we're
everything
emailing,
correctly,
texting, calling, we're doing all the things.
all the things, and we have
Date,
ample
timestamp.
proof, much ample proof to walk into a courtroom to show a judge that we made every single effort we could and we followed all the laws to, one, try to collect the rent on time, and then two, post the notice correctly so the tenant can't say that I never got anything. And that's their number one defense. I didn't know I was supposed to pay rent on time. Nobody ever said or sent me anything. You'd be surprised what people do in court. It's pretty crazy. So if we do end up having to file the eviction, we go to the local justice of the peace and we file the eviction. A non-payment of rent eviction is pretty much a cut and dry thing. Most of the time we attempt to use an attorney because we've been kicked out of court where our property managers and or even Melanie or I would attend court and they would say, you're not an attorney, I don't want to talk to you, get out. I know, don't get me started on the courts. I'm going to harp on that here in a second. Okay, when we start talking about non-payment of tenants. Okay, but focusing on this, once we go into the courtroom, we're going to get the writ of possession. We're going to get basically the lease. Let me say it better. The eviction is going to be granted. Here's your writ of possession. All right, that's the cleanest way to say it in legal terms. Once we have a writ of possession in hand, and this could be 15 days later, 45 days later, depends on the courts and how backed up they are. Terrible as this sounds, it's actually worse the first of the year because people don't want to, they forget to pay rent around Christmas, and the first of the year evictions are the worst. And if you had to go to eviction court in January, it would be triple what you would see in May. So people are just like that. And we don't manage a lot of those types of homes, but clearly our eviction rate is less than 1%. And I'm talking hardcore, full-blown eviction where we're doing an executed writ of possession. So once we go into court, we're going to get a writ of possession. We take that writ of possession to the constable/sheriff, and we file the writ of possession to get executed, which means the sheriff constable is going to call us up and say, okay, we got the writ, you paid your fee, let's meet Monday morning at the home and bring 2 guys per bedroom. That's their standard. So we have to hire a crew to bring 2 people, it could be male or female, per bedroom. So if it's a 3-bedroom home, the constable and or sheriff's going to want to see 6 people roll up and ready to move all that stuff to the curb.
Plus the
And
locksmith to change.
plus the locksmith.
Yeah.
Correct. Plus the locksmith to change the locks. And we don't do a lot of these writ of possessions like hardcore, they call them curb parties. We just don't do a lot of those because a lot of the folks will end up either abandoning the property and we can take it back, and or they're going to pay up and then get back on track, which we'll allow anytime. There's no harm, no foul necessarily if they lost their job or they're on furlough. We're starting to see some of that right now where people are going to try to pay late or won't be able to pay because of the government being on shutdown right now. And so some government employees are on furlough. The thing about the furlough is we all know they get caught up. They knew it was going to happen potentially. We do have a little bit of a heart, but there is only so much that we can do for that because we are representing our owners. The same situation that happened during COVID when we had an eviction moratorium put on by the feds, which was completely unconstitutional. I will not touch at this point. So once we attend the writ of possession, that's when we get the home back, and that is when we can go ahead and rotate it out. We do the inspections, we do the walkthroughs, and we start doing the make ready. And if there's any sort of charges that need to be compiled and claimed against the tenant, all that's being done at that point. Okay, so that leads very nicely into the next part of what I want to talk about, unless we have anyone that wants to add anything to that particular comment, that particular topic. Okay, so next one, number 5. Why is the owner responsible for the repair amount that exceeds the tenant's security deposit? Well, I need to help everybody understand that first and foremost, the tenant is responsible for that amount. But if the tenant only has a certain amount of security deposit tied in to the home and they have more than that amount, let's say they have a $2,000 security deposit, even a nice round figure, and they cause $3,000 in damage. Well, the tenant would technically owe $1,000. That's actually owed by the tenant. So the collecting on that is another fun part. You first have to understand that you might be trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip, okay? And I'm going to go through the process of what can be done, but at the end of the day, this is an owner responsibility because it's the owner's home, right? This is This is something that RentWerx has no say in the matter. We don't own the property. We do our very best to rent the home to the qualified applicant. And in the same discussion, I want to circle back everybody to why should we price aggressively on that home? If the home is priced aggressively and you get a really good tenant, paragraph 5, which is why is the owner responsible for the repair amount that exceeds the tenant's security deposit, that question kind of goes away. Because if you can get a really good paying tenant because you have the pick of the litter, you're going to have a 90% chance that you're not going to exceed the security deposit limit on the repairs of the outgoing tenant. Okay, but I do want to talk through that. So when a tenant vacates the home, we get detailed evidence of that property and how it looks. We do a full-blown inspection. We do videos. We do the 360 camera tours. It's ready to go into a courtroom that day. Okay, we compile all the stuff that's going to be completed and has been completed. So as a note, we can only charge the tenant what has been charged and completed. Okay, we can't charge the tenant for carpet and then you decide to sell the home and pocket the money. Okay, if a judge saw that, he would throw the case out and probably spank you pretty good for trying to bring it against that tenant. So what we do is we advise our owners, if you're going to charge $500 for carpet cleaning, you better be sure to clean the carpet, right? Clean the carpets, do the work that you said you're going to do in that security deposit itemization, and you cannot go wrong. Okay, now if we get into a big number, let's say $3,000, $5,000, $8,000, and that's what the tenant might owe you on the property. A couple things. Owners should be looking to file an insurance claim with their insurance company. You can do that for the hazard insurance. You might have some sort of like rider in there that says you do have some sort of protection against a malicious tenant damage. However, then you run into the obstacle of the deductible. If the deductible were 1% and you have a $200,000 home, there's a $2,000 deductible right there. Is it worth it when the insurance company is going to turn around and either A, cancel you or raise your deductibles and raise your monthly premiums going forward? So it's a double-edged sword on that one. But if there is malicious damage and you want to go through the headache of hiring an attorney, you can do that. Our job is to prepare you to do that if you so choose that path. And we've had owners that have done that. It's not a very high success rate. Again, the blood out of a turnip thing. But what you would do is you would compile everything and then you hire an attorney and you file a lawsuit. So first you have to serve the outgoing tenant. You have to give them some sort of proof of damages. Let's say they don't respond to them being properly served. You can file some sort of lawsuit with the local justice of the peace under $10,000. So here's kind of the line in the sand, the way the courts work. If it's under 10K, you can go to the JP. If it's over 10K, you got to go to the county court. So let's say you go to the justice of the peace. Let's say you properly serve the tenant and the tenant no-shows. Okay, you're going to get a default judgment for, X thousand dollars. Maybe you'll get attorney's fees. Maybe you won't, right? That's the dilemma. So let's go back to that scenario of a $2,000 security deposit and the tenant causes $3,000 in damage and you're out $1,000. Okay, you're going to spend $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 hiring an attorney on retainer. Okay. You're going to properly serve the tenant. That's an additional expense. You're going to show up to court, whether you have to travel or fly or whatever. A lot of times the judges may or may not work with the attorney directly without you being there. That's really a court thing. That's a judge thing. And you walk into court and you win because it's a default judgment because the tenant was properly served but never shows up. And the judge, even though you're asking for $10 million, says, well, I'll give you $1,000. Here you go. You got a $1,000 judgment that you just won. Meanwhile, you just paid your attorney $5,000 to show up to court. You flew into town to go to court, took days off of work to do it. And now you have a judgment in your hot little hand for $1,000. How are you going to collect that? Okay. The judgments are difficult to collect on. You can't just freeze their bank account. Typically judges are not going to do that. You can put it on their credit report, which we do anyway. We do this anyway. We also take that compiled amount of what the tenant owes us and puts it onto their credit report. We have access to do that. That's part of our service as a property manager. But I want owners to realize that a lot of times these tenants are not going to pay up and you're better off to just cut your losses and move on. All the improvements you make to the property are tax deductible. Okay, there is a silver lining there. So you can get some sort of reimbursement from that. Any of those attorney's fees, I would be afraid, may not be. So I want you to, kind of consider that. And the courts, I will say this about the courts. They don't follow laws. All right, let that sink in, right? It doesn't make any sense. But the judges at the JP level, they don't have to follow the law. They don't.
The wild, wild west.
It's a
will
wild, wild
concur.
west.
Yeah, for sure.
But Mr. Judge, I have a lease agreement in my hand. Here it is. It says in writing that the tenant's going to do 1, 2, and 3, and I'm supposed to get their firstborn child and their kidneys. It says right here in writing. And the judge will say, nope, get out. So what are you left to do? You could appeal, okay, triple damages and more attorney's fees to appeal. And again, it's so frustrating that no matter the contracts, no matter the whatever the attorney is telling you that you're going to win and you're going to win lots of money, it just doesn't happen like that in reality, okay? We can put something on their credit report and maybe they'll come back and want to settle up with us. We do turn these tenants over into collections, right? Which is a low-go scenario. There's very low turnout on the collection efforts, but we do make those after tenant lease situations happen, trying to get you something back. Okay, we do our best at the lowest cost. Because at the end of the day, guess what happens to the funnel? If you go hire an attorney for $5 or $10 grand, you're going to be right back where we are from day one. You're going to basically have a list of charges that a judge verified, and you have a writ of something. You have some sort of judgment. Well, you're doing the same thing we're doing. You're putting them in collections, and you're trying to hit their credit report. So it's really the same thing. Melanie?
I will say, yeah, I feel like we see when those tenants decide to become homeowners or try and get a home loan, that's when they tend to reach out to us and are, hey, we want to settle, sorry about what happened 1, 2, 3 years ago. So we do collect on those, but it typically tends to be when those tenants decide to be homeowners and now they're tail between their legs asking for forgiveness.
Yeah. And
It happens, but it's not very common.
yeah, I
I have
remember
that
one
scenario
recently.
literally this week, same thing. From 3 years ago, a tenant moved out. They owed like $2,600 and now they're trying to get a loan or something and now they're wanting to pay it. So they're supposed to pay it Friday, so we'll see.
Yeah, so we do see positive results with those, and it can be years later, but it does stick to their credit. It does follow them, and it's really nothing that they can dispute when we have all the evidence. Again, this is part of a good property management process. Is we have all the evidence ready to go. Our mindset is everything we do at the end of the lease agreement. We're going to walk into a courtroom tomorrow. We're going to walk into a courtroom tomorrow, get in front of a judge, and say, this, and this happened. We made this, and this repair, and we can stand by it. Here it is. Here's all of our evidence.
To add to that, Brad, I actually just spoke to a homeowner who had been self-managing, and the tenant left and completely wrecked their home. And so they kept the tenant's security deposit, and then the tenant decided to take them to court for that security deposit. And because the homeowner didn't have the proper documentation, the judge actually required the homeowner to pay that amount back times three times the amount, which is crazy because the homeowner had proof that they had damaged the home. They just didn't have proof of the condition of the home when they moved in from a couple of years ago. So it really, like, the homeowner at that point was like, oh my gosh, I know I'm not cut out for this because of the level of documentation you need to keep. He realized he didn't have the ability to do that. So documentation is really key.
Yeah, that's what's called triple damages. The courts and the attorneys love that term. And that's exactly what the judge did to that homeowner, because I can read between the lines and I understand that the proper security deposit itemization was probably not prepared and properly sent to the tenant, because that's what a tenant can say. I never got my security deposit back, nor did I get anything in writing that says I was supposed to owe money or you were keeping my security deposit. That security deposit itemization, if it's not done correctly on time, incurs practically automatically triple damages back to the tenant. And the courts are dead serious about that. They're going to rule in the tenant's favor every single time. That is property code. That is Texas law. And this is why you need a good property manager, that we execute that on a monthly basis. We do 30 to 50 a month of those. And we know exactly what's got to be done because we know, you may get into that situation where you got to go into a courtroom and say, yeah, these were the damages. Here's a copy of my security deposit. It was certified mailed. It was emailed. It was sent via DocuSign with a date timestamp that we saw the actual tenant open. So, I mean, we go in there hardcore with proof. So the tenant can't just say, I never got anything. I want triple damages, or they go hire an attorney on contingency. Oh, that's another thing I'm going to talk about. If no one knows the contingent lawyers these days, there is such a thing. So we've all seen the Texas Hammer, and give me a couple other ambulance chasing attorneys, Mel.
Thomas J. Henry.
Thomas
the
J. Henry.
Fours,
Oh, great example. Great. You'll see him on the Cowboys games, and these, 444, dial fours. And so the way these attorneys work, and attorneys they'll do this for pretty much anything they feel they're going to win on, is they call it working for contingency. And they don't get paid anything until there's a settlement and or ruling where there's some cash involved. So when money changes hands. So they'll say, yeah, you never got security deposit itemization. Yeah, you're going to get triple damages and attorney's fees. And so I'm going to go ahead and get you the triple damages and then ask for 10 grand in attorney's fees. And they did 2 hours of work and went to court, right? And a judge, if the judge likes that attorney, they'll grant it. And guess what? You can't do anything about it other than file an appeal, which is you're putting down a triple bond with the court, hiring an attorney, and going up to the county court, which means you can't go represented by yourself. You have to have an attorney. 100% you have to have an attorney. And so it just gets worse from there. So this is where, I hate to scare people, but this is where it really comes, rubber meets the road, where you need somebody to do these processes to the letter. All right, let's move on. Okay, I did want to talk about the insurance a little bit more. There is no real insurance to cover tenant damage, as mentioned. You can get some level of rider protection inside of your homeowner's insurance policy, but they're not going to cover all the damages. So at the end of the day, this is going to be something that is just the cost of doing business. It's the risk of renting. When you own a property for 20 years and you pay off 20 years of the mortgage and you've appreciated 3 to 5% per year, and you have a sideways pyramid you're looking at for what you made on the property versus what you owe, you're going to thank us. Okay, that's when you really win, is you have to look long-term into this game of, okay, I'm going to reap the benefits of appreciation and tax benefits. I'm going to take it in the shorts with a bad tenant once in a while. Okay, that's the nature of owning rental property. All right, let's talk lease renewals. How do you handle lease renewals and lease rate increases? So it's a process, or as they say in Australia, a process. Our lovely Vice President, Miss Amy, who's from New Zealand, she is legal, by the way. We did verify. So we don't want anybody kicking in the door, taking our Amy. But she would call it a process. So the process works as we start 120 days out, and we start pinging the owner, we start pinging the tenant, and it really is a two-way system there to make sure that the actual lease renewal can happen. First, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, do you want to continue to rent the home? Yes, no, maybe so. You don't want to sell the home, you talk to me. If you want to burn the home down, you just put in there you want to burn the home down. Okay, that's a yes. Then we go to the tenant. Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, are you interested in continuing to lease the property further on? These are the rough conditions. We're going to do a 3% rent raise, which is a regimented rent raise every year. Owners can defer that. Again, we think that's a silly move. I'll talk to you why. But owners can defer a rent raise. And we go to the tenants and say, okay, we're going to raise your rent typically by 3%. You can do a year-long extension or 9-month or 15-month, whatever. We're flexible on that because we also want to get the owner back onto a renting cycle. So right now, 5 November is not a good time to incur a vacancy. Duh. Our low point of the year is coming into Thanksgiving. That's the absolute slowest time of our leasing cycle. So if a tenant right now were to say, I want to do a 14 or 15-month extension, we would probably allow them to do that. Okay, it may not be outside of our process, but also they try to coincide it with school years, which makes a lot of sense too. Like, let's get my kid through high school next year. Give me a 15 or 18-month extension. Okay, that's some on that. So we do try to use some common sense in that application side of it. Once we get all parties kind of giving us a tentative yes that they want to renew on both sides, we're going to do our annual inspection. That's going to be our renewal inspection. We'll send one of our technicians over there. They'll do the full-blown look at everything. The tenant will be present. They'll take pictures. They'll take video. They are not intrusive. They are not offensive. They do a very good professional quality inspection. We will review that in office, and if everything looks okay, we can proceed with lease renewal, but we also look at things that are not on the lease, like occupants. We look at potential pets. Are there any pets on the lease now? Because we have picture proof of a dog bowl and a dog dish, but on the lease agreement, there's no pets in the lease agreement because they didn't tell us about a pet, which is fine. It's not the end of the world. Okay, we don't kill the tenants on this stuff. We say, okay, great. Let's run your pets through pet screening, right? So we're following the fair housing guidelines, running every single tenant through every single same process. And then if all looks good, we can do a new lease agreement. But I also want to hammer that we do a new lease agreement every year. Okay, it's not just a one-page extension. There are other property managers out there that just do a one-page lazy extension. That is lazy in my opinion, because we do a full-blown lease agreement because the terms of the lease may change and or the rules around leasing may change, such as the new lead-based paint addendum the feds have slapped on us that we have to get completed every year. So we do that during lease renewal, and or we may have a new policy that the tenants need to see and have to acknowledge off on. So there's certain things that we want to make sure are updated every year, and we do a full-blown brand new lease agreement, and that's a living, breathing document. Melanie, you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that when a tenant tells us that they want to move out because they want to buy a home, we're trying to talk to them about purchasing the home that they're in possibly. And then we'll broach that with the owners just as another option. They obviously don't have to say yes, but that is something that we talk
And
with them about.
that is a great point. We also try to intercept them on the buying process. And that's a really good thing for the owners. I know it seems counterintuitive, but it really is, because if we can intercept them in wanting to buy a property, one, they could buy yours potentially, right? We asked that question very first. Two, okay, let's help you get pre-qualified. Let's help you find a home. And we help them exit in conjunction with the lease agreement to ease the 30-day notice of we're vacating, right? So we actually control the process more, which is a benefit to the owner, because if a tenant's going to buy a home, here's your 30-day required notice. I'm out the end of November. And now you're scrambling. Wait, what? You're leaving. But if we can get them to maybe extend a month or two, we help them buy the home, and then we control their exit better. They're better to exit the property. We've seen that a lot, where the tenants exiting the property, they bought a home through one of our agents. They leave that property way better than just an exiting and going to another city or another real estate company buying a property, right? They're working with us, and they kind of have like an obligation to make sure the home is in good condition. And in addition, we can work with them on any early termination fees, which again controls the process better versus just them upping and leaving the property. If they want to early terminate, we'll go through that here in a little bit. I got another frequently asked question on that. Last note on the lease renewal process is we always encourage owners to take some sort of rental increase. Your property taxes go up every year. Your insurance goes up every year. You need to pass that on to the tenant. That's the way the world works. And I know it sucks. I know it's a big thing, but when you start hearing politicians they talk about the affordability crisis of homes. Well, where does that come from? It comes from property taxes and insurance that they could control better. Now that's a whole nother rant. I could go on to my podcast mindset there and just go off for an hour on property taxes, et cetera, et cetera. None of us like them, but keep that in mind that your property taxes go up, and to offset that, you need to raise the rent every year. The tenants are expecting it. They have been prepped from the very, very, very beginning. The first form they get says your rent will most likely be increased by at least 3%, maybe more. So they've already been prepped. If they've signed that or completed it, they've already sort of agreed to it. And I say sort of, it's not in writing in blood, but it's basically like, okay, they understand it, it's coming. You can go ahead and put a small rental increase on them. Now, if you don't want to increase the rent, that's totally allowed. It's your home, it's your money, it's fine, okay? We don't want to force you to do that, but we would encourage you to continue to keep market rate, because if you keep doing that 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, you could be charging $1,200 a month and everybody around you is $1,500 a month. Remember that story, Melanie, I talked about years ago, where we took a home from another property manager, and that property manager was charging literally $1,200 a month, and they were just doing desktop renewals, right? A desktop renewal is like, okay, you're alive, you want to continue to rent the home? Okay, cool, I'll send you a form, just sign it. And no inspection, no rent raise, nothing. desktop renewal for 5 years straight. They came to us and said, we're interested in making a change. What do you think we can get for this home? $1,500 all day long, probably twice on Sunday. And they were immensely upset. They immediately fired that property manager and came on board with us. They had a vacancy coming up. We rented their home for like $1,500 plus, and we got them back into market rate. But that's the downside. If you have a bad property manager that are doing just desktop renewals, they'll just continue to renew at the same rate. Same with owners. Is it's okay to ask for a little bit more, even in small increments, but keep you closer to market rate. So you fast forward a number of years and you're pretty close to where you should be anyway. Okay, next one. What happens if a tenant breaks their lease agreement early? So we have two factions of this. An early termination. We have an approved early termination and obviously basically an abandonment. Okay, an abandonment, let's talk through that. So if the tenant is non-payment of rent and we finally get in touch with them and they say, I've left the property, I'm out. And they have to say that typically, and we could get a recorded phone call. We could get some sort of text message. We could get some sort of email, but we like it in writing that says, I've left the property, go to heck, whatever. And then great, we bust into the property with our locksmith, and then we clean the property out and we take pictures and video and we document everything and we treat it just like an abandonment, and that's compiled and that's sent to the tenant for a bill. And it goes into collections, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so an abandonment is treated very much like an eviction, and we compile everything. So if the owner does want to go to some sort of court scenario, we are ready to help the owner with that. That's the what if they leave early. Now, if they want to leave early on an approved early termination, we have a couple different ways they can do that. Okay, they can reach out to us. They can follow our lease agreement. They can pay up front to have a 60-day lease termination, and or they can carry the term of that lease out and try to re-rent the property while they live there. Okay, we give them the option to do the approved side because we take the relocation scenario, right? That's a really good example. You get somebody that's working for, you name the company, Tesla, right? They're moving to Austin to go work at Tesla up there. And Tesla's giving them 10 grand in relocation money. They come to us and say, I'm relocating. Here's my 60-day notice. I'm going to pay the fee. Here's $6,000 or whatever that fee is totaled. And their lease is going to end in 60 days. In the meantime, they have to help try and show the property. They're going to leave the property in good terms. And some of those funds will go to the owner in reimbursement. And we turn around and release the property. That's a really good way to do it if that happens. And that's why we also offer that particular option. And it's all in our lease agreement. So we've thought this through. We've seen the other side of that to where we've seen owners continually charge a monthly fee and not change their rent. Because in writing, you don't have to change the rent. If they rent the home for $2,000 a month, they have to get you $2,000 a month. We do not allow subleasing. So essentially they have to try and replace themselves with a new tenant at $2,000 a month. Well, in that scenario, the one I just painted, market had dipped. And so now that $2,000 a month rental, they couldn't get it. And so that particular tenant, we felt really bad for them. They paid every month on a vacant home, $2,000 a month on a vacant home, and ended the lease on good terms, but they hadn't lived there for 6 months. That's not good for a home, gang. That's not. They turned off the AC. I mean, they basically left the property and were still paying rent. And the owners, when they took the home back, they had some issues. There were some AC issues. The carpet was kind of stale. I mean, the place was a mess as far as it hadn't been cleaned. So that could have been avoided had they just let them early terminate and then going back to market rate at $1,900 a month. Okay, so that's kind of a sob story there. Anything to add on that, gang?
It's important to note that if we do an early termination option with a tenant, the owner should not sell. We've gotten into some of those situations where we've, agreed to early termination options and then the owners decide to sell and it kind of nullifies it.
Yeah, noted. Okay, let's talk through this. What is the owner insurance surcharge? Insurance surcharge. Okay, say that fast 3 times. The insurance policy update that we just sent out, that went out on the end of October. It's a nice 4-page document that I wrote up, and it talks about the insurance surcharge. So I'm going to give you the bottom line up front. Get good insurance. Name RentWerx on your insurance policy. no surcharge. Okay, I could say that again, but I want to let that sink in. We charge that as a method of protecting ourselves from homeowners that are unable or unwilling to carry the proper level of insurance on the home. You really, really, really need to have insurance on a rental property. You need to let your insurance company know that you're making it a rental property, and you need to make sure that they are carrying the correct insurance, and you need to make sure that RentWerx is on the policy. And in our policy letter update, I explain why that is very important. Everything from the background of this to the reasoning to owning the rental property, the courts are against you, the double lawsuit scenario, and also RentWerx purchases insurance that covers us. It's our insurance, not yours. Okay, so the surcharge helps cover some of that, and that is for us to protect ourselves from an uninsured or underinsured homeowner. Again, the bottom line is if you go get insurance, you name RentWerx on your policy, you send us a copy of that insurance proof, we remove the surcharge forever and ever. We'll even backdate it. So if you did this 2 months ago and you got a rider that says it was 2 months ago, we'll remove or reimburse you for a mistakenly charged surcharge. We don't want to charge it, but we have to protect ourselves from an uninsured landlord. Now, if you carry a property that is owned outright, you don't have to carry insurance, okay? And maybe it's cheaper to pay the surcharge so we can protect ourselves at least. And so if we end up getting into a lawsuit because the tenants are litigious, tenants find out these contingency taking attorneys, and it's really scary out there. I mean, I've heard a horror story. We have one of our sister companies here in town. The tenant, air quote, slipped on the back deck. Okay, they hurt themselves in the property and found an attorney and decided to sue the property manager and the owner for $1 million, just abstractly $1 million, right? They probably, hurt their ankle or something completely minor, but they just decided to sue. So now everybody's got to defend themselves. And if we don't have some sort of joint insurance policy, what will happen is the owner will pay for their defense, and then RentWerx has to pay for our defense, and we have to turn around and sue the owner for our defense bills. It is completely jacked up how the system works, and we want to avoid all of that. We want to avoid all of that. We want to work with our owners. We want a nice, happy relationship. Just go get good insurance, please. And that's all you got to do. Miranda, she harps on this when she talks with new owners, and I really feel that is something that we hope all the owners take into heart is just go get good insurance and update us, and we'll remove that forever and ever. Miranda, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a specific story, but I think, having an investment property, this is a complete business that we're running, that you're running, and a lot of times people don't even know what they're getting into. They don't realize all the legalities, they don't realize all the court nuances and things like that, and that's what we're here for as a property manager, is to really protect them from all of those things and really help them. And so when you think about it, that small 10% management fee that we charge every month really just protects them in the long run. They really get a wealth of knowledge and advice from working with us, because that's really what we're here for, is just to consult them and provide them with the best way to do things. And so, there's reasons in place for why we do everything, and we're happy to go into those details if they ever have those questions. But really that's what this is about. And so many times, people are doing this accidentally in today's market because they didn't intend to rent their home, but the market is the real estate market's really struggling, and so they're becoming a accidental landlord, because unfortunately weren't able to sell, or other people just came across a great deal and bought the home, as an investment property, or were gifted the home from a relative, but still don't realize all that goes into renting a home. And so, everything we do is really to protect them. And this is one of the ways that we do that, is by encouraging them to have their own insurance, to really.
It's kind of like a financial deterrent. Okay, so look at it like that. My biggest fear, and I'll paint the scenario for you. We have an accidental landlord, like Miranda mentioned. They get up and they PCS to Washington, D.C. They're military. They bought the home VA, and they never updated their insurance. They never called USAA and said, hey, I'm leaving the home. I'm renting the property now. There are tenants in the property. 6 months, a year goes by. They're still paying primary residence rates because they are intending to come back. They hope to get PCS back from D.C., back to the San Antonio region, and they hope to move back into the home in 3 years, 5 years, 20 years. And they're just going to leave their primary residence insurance in place Guess what? If a claim is filed, that will absolutely be canceled and denied. So you've been paying insurance this whole time, and you file a claim, roof damage, hail, okay? USAA finds out that you have a tenant in place and you've had a tenant in place for 6 months. They're going to, 1, cancel the claim, and 2, cancel your policy. And so you've been paying for insurance for nothing. Okay, that's my biggest fear. So this is meant to kind of serve as a wake-up call to some of the owners that this is dead serious. We really need you to get good insurance, and we really want you to name RentWerx in that policy. Now, I say in that policy because for a long time, the industry was saying, get named additionally insured, okay? Well, every insurance company calls it something else. It could be additionally interested. It could be the buddy system. I mean, I don't know, whatever they want to call it. Just get RentWerx LLC named on your insurance policy. However, the insurance company you're working with will allow you to do that. We don't want to get wrapped around the wording of it, but at some point it's going to benefit you to have us named on there if there's ever a claim. Trust me, we are telling you the honest truth. Okay, I'm going to move on. Why is direct owner to tenant communication a bad idea? This is one of our favorites, right? Because we get owners that say, what do you mean I can't talk to my tenant? It's my tenant, it's my home. I want to talk to him. We feel it's a bad idea. Now, this is America. We can't tell you what to do. Okay, we're not going to send the tenant police out after you and say that you talk to the tenant, you're going to jail. Okay, we can't do anything like that, but we just really feel it's a bad idea. So first, you hire us to be your property manager. This gives you a layer of in between, a buffer layer as they call it. Tenants are going to ask for things outside of the lease agreement, and they're going to try and catch you on Christmas Eve when you've had 3 drinks and you're willing to do anything. Okay, so never give a tenant your mobile phone, and I really advise you from ever giving a tenant your email, because they're going to ask you things that are going to be either inappropriate or put you in an uncomfortable position. They will mommy daddy you. This is our favorite term. Okay, the mommy daddy thing. They're going to get a no from RentWerx. Can I pay my rent late this month? It's Christmas, my dog ate my homework, etc., etc. Can I pay rent late this month? RentWerx, no. I'm going to call the owner. And Mr. Owner, okay, just pay whenever. It's okay. No, you hire us to be your stalwart, right? We're the bad guys in this scenario. Let us be the bad guys. We're professional. We have a 0 tolerance policy. If they're going to pay late on the rent, we'll deal with it. Let us handle that. Melanie, you got a comment?
I mean, just that, you hit the nail on the head. We do have a 0 tolerance policy. They have many ways they can pay. We send reminders. We do all the things. Again, it's all to protect the owners. And so we don't want the owner to be working against us. We're a partner, not working against each other.
And back to the mommy daddy thing, tenants will lie to you. They will lie to you and say that RentWerx doesn't do this and RentWerx doesn't do that. And I can't get a hold of anybody. And I can't, they're lying to you. We have some of the best communication processes in the industry. And I guarantee you, if they want to get a hold of us, they can. If they had a repair, they get a hold of us. You wait and see, right? But if they have issues with something else, they're going to lie to you. In addition to, they love to tell owners that they want to buy the property. I've been seeing this for years. Miranda and I were talking about this pre-show. It's like, I've seen the market go up and down. When we first started doing this in 2010, 2011, really full-time, hardcore, everyone was having a hard time selling and they were turning to renting. Well, then we saw COVID and you could sell the home with a Facebook post. And now we've seen it kind of dip, and where it's a tougher market now. So we've seen all markets. And the one thing I've seen tenants do throughout that time is they put the word out that they want to buy the property. And that makes owners go crazy. I don't know what the deal is, but they just turn around, they lose their mind and say, well, whatever the tenant wants, let them have it because I think they're going to buy the property. Well, crickets, let's wait until they actually can qualify and they pony up and do want to buy the property. But for now, they're just a tenant and we want to treat them as professionally as we can, just like every other tenant that we work with. This is going to give you the best opportunity to potentially sell to them or somebody else down the road. Okay, I'm going to close this out with number 10. Can RentWerx help me sell my home? Yes, we can, and you'll be working with me directly. So as the founder, owner, real estate broker of RentWerx, Melanie's the broker of record. I'm a broker, have been a broker for 20 plus years, 23 to be exact. I've sold over 1,000 homes in my career, and we understand what selling homes is. We have a financially awesome team with RentWerx. They can get all the stuff done. So yes, we can help you sell your home. We, as I say, because it's a team effort, we charge 2.5%. So 2.5%. Let me explain that, as they say. Let me explain it. So to explain the 2.5%, that's on the listing side. So the listing agent would be me, RentWerx, SaleWorks. We'll list the property for 2.5%. If a buyer's agent comes along, that is a negotiable commission. So that may be incurred on top of a 2.5%. So easy math. RentWerx, SaleWorks charges 2.5%. We put the home in the market for sale. Here comes a buyer's agent represented with whatever company in town. They want to represent the buyer. They submit an offer to purchase, and they want a 3% commission on top of that. Pretty common and customary in this market, even in today's new NAR rules, National Association of Realtors rules. They're still asking for 3%. So you have a total of 5.5%. The 3% buyer's agent commission is negotiable. This is the fun part. Absolutely love it, because if they come at you with a terrible offer, we start negotiating down the buyer's agent's commission. Oh, and guess what? The buyer can magically bring up their offer so they can get their 3% commission. That's the beautiful thing about today's market. It really is kind of a fun situation to be into, because you can get a better deal, and it keeps these buyers and buyers agents more in line with a fair. I think it's just more fair. I never liked that 3% default thing. I never liked the 3%, is take it or leave it type stuff. It just, I don't know. I never got a comfortable feeling. So when NAR made their changes literally a year ago, I think it was 1 November last year, Melanie, if I recall, they made their NAR changes, and the market has adopted to that very well. The same holds true in renting properties now. Okay. We've had a whole big podcast about this, whole big laundry list discussion, that there is no difference, in my opinion, of the NAR rules from selling and or renting. Any commission source, 3 words, Melanie, right? Remember this? In the NAR ruling, the bullet points that they put out was any commission source for a commission abides by the NAR rules. So this is why we ask all the owners now, 1, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, you're renting a property. Do you want to pay a commission? First, do you want to pay a commission? Yes or no? 2, how much do you want to offer, which is going to be on your dime? If you want to offer a tenant agent commission of $10,000, great, you're paying for it. We don't recommend offering a tenant realtor commission because these homes are renting without them. That's the adjustment the market has made. We're seeing more and more tenant agents actually work for free and or charge the tenant, because that action of renting a property with a tenant has never been a moneymaker. I mean, previously we would charge $300. We would offer a $300 commission. They can't make money on that when you spend, 2 days showing 10 properties to a prospective tenant. What are they doing? They're working for referrals. They're banking that tenant is going to, 1, give them referrals either for somebody who wants to sell, or they're going to want to buy a property or that property later on. That's what they're working for. So nothing's really changed with the motivation of these tenant realtors. It's only their commission source. Okay. So back to that. Yes, RentWerx can help sell your home. You'll be working with me directly with our team, and we can help put your home on the market. We don't recommend you try and sell with a tenant in place. This is one thing I want to talk about, because at the end of the lease agreement, you'll have a 30-day window that you could potentially, this is grandfathered in as part of the common and customary in this market. We've grandfathered in a last 30-day action. So we technically could put the property on the market for rent and or for sale, or both, the last 30 days of a lease agreement. But we just don't recommend that, because the tenants don't show the property very well. The property is a mess. It's just one of those things. The tenants will block showings and piss off the buyer's agents. It really never works out very well. So we typically want you to wait till the property's vacant, made ready, new pictures, new video, and we can go on the market for sale, for rent, or for both. And we'll be happy to work with you in that scenario. Anything else you want to add, Miranda?
Yeah, so I mean, at the beginning of this, you said 2 things help a home rent or sell, and that's price or presentation, price and presentation. And so, in today's competitive market, you really only get 1 chance to make a first impression. If they don't like what they see when they walk in, they're just going to go down the street to the next home that's available. So really, that is partly why we really recommend that the home is vacant when getting listed, and we don't recommend doing that with a tenant in place, because the home almost has to be model home worthy every time somebody walks in, and it's unlikely a tenant is going to leave it in that condition every single day before they head out for the day. So yeah,
it's really a good comparison. Let's say we're renting a home in San Diego, an apartment on the beach with beach views in San Diego, right? Of course, you're going to get people lined up around the street to want to rent that property because it's San Diego, right? It's on the beach. I mean, come on. This is San Antonio. This is a sunny, great state. We love it. However, the market is kind of neutral. It's not bad. It's not great. So it's going to take an aggressive amount of marketing and effort and condition to be able to get the property rented and or sold. So that's something to take away from that, if nothing else. Okay, we've rambled on for a good hour. Any parting comments from the team?
No. Happy Veterans Day next week.
Double checking. We didn't have any questions pop in that I saw, unless I missed something. Q&A. No open questions. Okay, good. So we'll be sure and share this out to all the folks on our website. We'll put it on the social media and we'll have it there for archives. So if Miranda or the other team members get frequently asked questions, we can also link this video to them so they can try to get some of these answers, you know, in real time. They can hear it from real voices, let's say. All right, sorry to bore you with all the boring stories of Drake and the evictions and all the business stuff and insurance. I mean, some of these things are not the most exciting, but they are necessary in explaining how we do things and why we do things. So I appreciate everyone attending. Until then, we'll see you maybe in the next month or so. We'll do another podcast and try to get Stacy to shut up for a few minutes at least, and so I can get a word in edgewise there.
Okay.
Okay, Glenn.
Bye.
All right, appreciate everyone. Have a happy Veterans Day, and we'll talk to you next month. Take care.